Hey everybody, welcome back to the Show It webinar. We're excited to have you here today. I'm Shamisha. I'm with Community Development in the Marketing with Show It. And today we have another special guest that's going to be pretty much putting money in your pocket. So let's get started. You're probably here because you're just searching for a way to either take an idea or a passion or maybe even your current business and turn it into something that's going to make you more money or some money. And so today we have Amy Sangster with Member Up. She's the co-founder and CEO, and she's going to be talking to us today about how to start that recurring revenue business. And even if you don't even have an idea yet, or maybe you have an idea and you don't know which direction to go, Amy's going to be here today to walk us through those steps. So please help me welcome Amy.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. I love Show It so much. This is like a dream to get to partner with you guys and share what I know about online business and help you guys, as Shamisa said, make more money. So who's ready? Let me know in the chat if you're ready. It would be great if you could grab out a notebook. I don't want these to just be a presentation where you're just listening. Everything I do, I want it to be active so that you guys can actually walk away with real actionable advice after this. I also have a workbook about halfway through that I'm going to share with you guys. So stick around for that because that has a bunch of exercises and information in it that we may or may not get to cover within here. But speaking of what we'll cover, we are going to talk about how to decide what online business model is best for you, because I know there are so many different ones flying around out there. There's a lot of noise online. It can be really confusing to know exactly which business model to start. We're going to talk about how to discover your business idea, because even if you know the model and you're like, oh, I want to build an online course or I want to start a membership, sometimes it's the idea that's lacking. Most of the time, it's the idea that's lacking. Then we're going to talk about the 5 things that you need to build a thriving community-led business. And we'll talk about why I think community-led businesses are the absolute best business model to start. And we'll prove it with math. And then we're going to talk about, if we have time, how to launch your business, validate your idea, and attract your first members before you create any content. It's not a dream. It's not a fantasy. It is actually possible. And you don't have to have a ridiculously large audience to do so and to do it really well. And then at the end, we'll talk about some essential tools for your community creation journey. But before we get into the tactical stuff, I want you guys to just imagine if this was in your account next week. What would it mean to you if you could make $100,000 by sending out a couple of emails? What would this change for you and how would you feel? And also be aware when I say this, like I understand a lot of people on online training say these things and you don't really take it in and you don't go, that could be me. What limiting beliefs come up for you when I ask this question? Maybe you think it's not possible. Maybe you think it's possible for me and not you. Or maybe you're in the camp that you're totally aware that this is possible. You're already doing this, or you're super excited to do this, but you need to know how to actually make it happen. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And the reason that I chose 111,748 as the number is because that's exactly how much I made back in February when I launched my brand new community with absolutely zero content, just an idea. And the cool thing is that I didn't have any fancy webinars, no marketing budget, no ads, a decently small email list. I only emailed a segment of my email list about this. And like I said, just 5 emails. The best part of all of this, though, is that this wasn't one time that I was getting paid. This was actually recurring revenue, meaning that next February, this revenue is actually set to repeat. Plus, any more that I add to it, it's just consistently growing. Now, I want to say I'm not special. I've just developed skills and an awareness that pays better than any job that I ever had did. And it's possible for anyone willing to take action, learn these skills, and do the same. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to walk you through it all step by step. If you do have any questions, we can cover those at the end. And like I said, I do have a workbook that's going to help you get really, really actionable about what you're learning today too. But before we dive in, a quick little who am I? We won't get stuck on the intro too long. My name is Amy Sangster, like Shamisha said. I am an Australian. That's why I have a weird kind of accent. It's like a hybrid accent going on right now. It's because I'm originally Australian. I live in Malibu. You might think I'm an extrovert based on what I'm sharing here, but I'm actually super introverted. Yes, introverts can run communities too. I am the CEO and co-founder of Member Up, which we'll talk about and I'll share a little bit more about in this presentation. And I actually got my start in online business in 2012. So I've been talking about this stuff, doing this stuff for a very long time. And what kicked it off was actually a journey on YouTube. Please don't go and look me up. It's super uncomfortable. my old videos. So the pros and the cons of YouTube. Your content lives on there forever unless you delete it. I had a lifestyle channel where we were doing some pretty cringy but pretty viral videos around Lamborghinis. I had a Lamborghini and kind of grew a really big audience on YouTube. I didn't have all the business awareness back then that I do now, but that gave me a really large audience to start off with, and that's what kicked off everything. From there, I launched a multi-seven-figure financial education company, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit about how I got from just having cringy content on YouTube into a multi-seven-figure business. And I'll share the story with you of that in this training. And since that, I've also been a growth consultant for some of the biggest names in the online education industry, names that you guys are probably very aware of. I've been the ones behind the scenes, building their products, growing their businesses alongside them. So without further ado, enough about me. I want to know about you guys. Who here, let me know in the chat, has an online business or wants to start one? Let me know. Come on, guys. You can do it. All right. Well, I'll just assume that you all want one if you're here and that you don't already have one, because otherwise you'd probably be busy working on it right now. Like I said, what I love about online business is how much opportunity there is, but at times it can be so noisy. I feel like all I have to do is jump on YouTube nowadays or grab my phone and scroll on Instagram, and there's a new ad popping up telling me about what new business model I should start, a new thumbnail that's saying this is the best business model. And honestly, it can just be extremely overwhelming. But one of the biggest lessons that I've learned throughout my journey is the power of focus and avoiding shiny ball syndrome whenever you do see those thumbnails or you do see those ads. And the question then becomes, what business should we focus on? What one is the best? And that's a question that I've been asking myself right since 2012. And I'm going to share what I think the answer is with you today. And that's because over the last 12 years, I have pretty much done all of these, all of them that you saw back here. I've done coaching, courses. I haven't done an Amazon store, but I've done digital downloads, ebooks, memberships, have done a mastermind, did an eBay store. So very similar to Amazon. I have pretty much done all of them throughout this journey. And one of them came out as the clear winner. And I want to tell you which one and why, so that when those ads pop up, you can ignore the noise and you can know with confidence that what you're working on is the best business model for you. And I want to preface this with a caveat because I'm a big believer that there's not just one way. There are so many different ways to be successful, and you can be successful with any of those ones that I just shared on the last slide. But I am going to share the math behind why, after experience with almost every business model, everything I do nowadays keeps coming back to this one. And you guys, with the title of this webinar, you probably know what it is, right? Recurring revenue. So freedom and impact are my two highest values. And whenever I make any decision, I like to ask myself, what am I optimizing for? And for me in business, freedom and impact is what that is. So I knew early on that any business I started, any business I get into must fulfill both of those. To create the freedom I knew I wanted in my life, I knew I needed to make enough money because I was working a bank job at the time and studying finance in college. I knew that I needed to make enough money to be able to buy back my time. So I looked at my options and I researched. And I had recently I was a bit of a personal development junkie, still kind of am. And I'd recently been to a Tony Robbins event back then. And I remember him saying, the quality of your life is a direct reflection of the quality of the questions that you ask yourself. So I decided to ask myself a pretty big question as a 22-year-old. And I said, what is the quickest way to make $1 million? I spent some time researching what this is. And what I found was that I actually had a couple different options. The first was the one that we were all taught in school, right? To sell our time. But when I did the math on that, because I'm kind of a math nerd, as you can tell, studying finance, I found out that it didn't really look so great. And I found out that if I worked every single day at $30 an hour, which at the time was kind of the average pay rate in Australia, it would take me 11 years. Then I had to factor in tax and the cost of living for 11 years, and the math just didn't shake out. So I kept looking. What I found was that I needed to detach my time from my income because time is our only limited resource. So this led me down a fascinating rabbit hole studying money, time, business, mindset, finance. And one of the early realizations that I had was that I actually needed to sell a project because when I did sell a product, not a project, because when I did the math, it looked a whole lot more promising. I found out that, and you guys may know this, so forgive me if I'm kind of preaching to the converted here, but for me at the time, this was like a massive realization. If I could just sell $1,000 product 1,000 times, I was at my goal. So I started selling. First, it was physical products, like I said, as a friend had taught me how to drop ship on eBay. And that was an amazing start. And it allowed me to fund a really healthy investment account early on, but ultimately wasn't very fulfilling drop shipping. And it was really just a means to an end. And the profit from each sale wasn't really that large after I factored in the cost of buying the products, meaning that I had to sell a whole lot more of these products to actually hit that big number that I was aiming for. So I started looking for business models that had low expenses and high profit. And I found the online education industry, which was super appealing to me because, like I said, I was a bit of a personal development junkie at the time. And I had learned far more from education online than I ever had from school. I learned that I didn't need to be an expert to teach, which was a misconception. I looked at the people like Tony Robbins and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not Tony Robbins. How do I ever start selling online education? But I learned that I didn't need to be the best person in the world at this. I just needed to be a few levels above what other people, or a few levels above the people that I was actually teaching. So I looked at my results, I looked at what I loved and what people asked me for advice on, and finance was the clear winner. So I started an online course business, and that was a financial education course, and I launched it to the audience that I'd gained from YouTube. Because of the massive amount of traffic I had, which was a leg up for me, with very little digital marketing skills, like I knew pretty much nothing back then. I partnered with a friend on this business. We were able to make $1 million in our first year, which honestly blew my mind. Like I never expected that to happen so quickly. But what I realized about this business, although it was fantastic, was that when I stopped, sales stopped too. And if we weren't bringing in new sales every month, then we wouldn't be able to pay the team that we eventually hired to help us out. So it was really important for us to keep going. We're kind of on this hamster wheel. We had to keep making new sales every month, which, as any entrepreneur knows, is kind of the stressful part of working for yourself. The more sales we made as well, the more students we had that we needed to support. And even though they paid for one-time course access, we were still supporting them for years afterwards because we felt it was the right thing to do, but we weren't getting paid for that. So it wasn't really a fair exchange at the time. So I decided to ask myself a better question. I said, what is the best way, not the quickest way, to make $1 million? And to me, this meant, how do I provide ongoing support to our students while making the money that I want and be able to minimize my risk and create consistent revenue in the least amount of time? Which is a pretty big question, I know, but challenging questions encourage the best answers. And it did. The answer was to sell a subscription. So instead of selling once and getting paid once, then providing the ongoing support, I actually was able to start an online community subscription where thousands of students that we had on the same journey could support one another and not just look to us as the leaders of the community, but they could also increase their ability to get support in real time, have more kind of stickiness throughout the course because they're going through it with their peers. They could ask other people for support. They found, a community of people within that. It wasn't just them purchasing information anymore. It was actually them entering into a whole new community of people that were learning something with them. So an online community was really what came out as the winner for me after kind of going through. That was obviously a very short synopsis of the 12 years that I spent figuring this out. But within that time, an online community not only had the best results for my students, but it also had the best results for me as a business owner. If you're wondering, what the heck is an online community? Just to bring it back to simple for a second, an online community is where people come together to interact, share knowledge, and build relationships. Some people call this a membership. Some people call it an online community. This can even just be a course with a community element attached to it. And we're going to talk about all the different ways that you can make this happen. But what's most important about it is the recurring revenue part of it. So I actually created not one, but 3 online community subscriptions that brought in recurring revenue. And at the time, the business exploded. Not only that, though, and the most important thing to me, because freedom is such a value of mine, is that I could relax knowing that I wasn't starting at zero every single month, which, again, as an entrepreneur, if anyone here is building a business, you guys know that is the most stressful part of it. It also was really, really fulfilling to me to know that students were forming deep relationships and actually getting the support that they needed. You can see a little picture in the background here. This is some of our community. We actually reached 80,000 students with that business. And this is just a little snapshot of some of the impact that comes with having an online community. For me, it was far more fulfilling seeing the results that people were having and the connections they were making. We literally had people get married from our community because we allowed them to connect. No joke. Seriously, they did. I hope they're still together. It's been some time now. But they did. They found so much more than just the information that they were coming looking for. They really found a home within people that were kind of similar to them. And that's something that was super fulfilling to me because I had been looking for that my whole life too. I kind of always felt like the odd one out. I think connection is one of the most beautiful things about life, and to provide that to other people was just really, really special. So I share all this because when I look at the options out there nowadays, it can be really, really overwhelming to know which one is best. And without having the experience that I've had over the last 12 years trying to figure it out, it can be just extremely stressful to try and figure it out. You start down one path, then maybe you find some friction, you learn some lessons about it, you start down the next path. And if we actually just spent all of that same amount of time going these little different directions in one direction, we would be so much further ahead. And I wish that someone would have told me that recurring revenue is absolutely king when I started out, and how lucrative and fulfilling it can be to build a thriving community around a topic that you love. So I want you to ask yourself and write down the answer to this question. What are you optimizing for? And what are your business goals? Because knowing the answer to that is going to help you actually answer the question. And if your why is the same as mine and you want the freedom of an online business without the stress of an online business, who doesn't, while making an impact around a topic that you love, then an online business is the absolute best, hands down model for you. So take a note here. What are you optimizing for? In my community, because I still have one, it's not the same one as previously. I still have a finance community because I love it so much. And I ask this question always to help people refine their answers and to know how to prioritize what they're looking for in life. What are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing for freedom, impact, money? And then once you know that answer, then you can make decisions clearly because you know, okay, well, what's the best thing to get me the money? Or what's the best thing to make me feel fulfilled? Or what's the best thing to do all three together all at once? I suspect that many of you are very similar to me in that you want the freedom, you also want the money, and you want the impact all together. But I know that you probably have questions like this. How do I create a community? What do I create it about? What about churn? If you are familiar with this model, then a big thing that comes up for people is, what about the people that leave? How do I keep them engaged and coming back month after month, year after year? What do I include? How do I build one quickly and easily? I've heard the horror stories with WordPress and how long it takes and custom builds. And by the way, I did that. I custom built all of our memberships in the beginning days, and they were custom built on WordPress. The plugins would break all the time. We spent way too much money on designers and developers and all these things. So if you've gone down that route, don't worry. We're going to get into how to do it in less than 60 seconds in the end of this presentation. And then the big one is, that sounds great, Amy, but how on earth do I actually get people to join? So let's tackle them all, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end to address any that I haven't quite answered just yet. Sound good? Let's do it. All right. If you have no idea what you'd create a community about, then you are not alone. According to a recent, it's called the Marketing Benchmarking Report, over 60% of respondents who had not yet launched a subscription, most of them said that they didn't know how to start. And then the other majority of them said that they don't know who to serve. So they don't know what their idea is and they don't know who it's for. So that's why we're going to get you 100% clear on your idea, even if right now you don't feel like an expert, you have no idea what you're going to offer, so that you can actually be on the positive side of these stats and be one of the people that isn't just watching along on other people taking this journey, but actually actioning it yourself and getting the results it yourself. So this is a side where every month you're generating a growing predictable income just for bringing people together around a topic that you love. Now, because of how much time I have to share this with you, and Shamisha might cut me off at some point, so we'll see how far we can get. I want to give you an overview, and then I'm also going to give you a guide that you can download so that in your own time, you can take this away and you can actually go and find your own idea. So here's the overview of what we call the infinite community idea formula, which is really just a way to validate your idea and ensure it's clear and it's profitable before you do anything. Because I see so many entrepreneurs, unfortunately, wasting time, spending money, going down these paths that ultimately, if they had just validated it first, we could have probably figured out early on that that wasn't the best idea for them. So this idea formula helps you kind of make sure that you're going to have success with it before you go down that path. So in the resource that I'm about to share with you, there's a section for you to start by mapping out all of your ideas. And if you have none, there's a section for that too. But what I mean by all of your ideas is you might be someone like me that kind of has scatterbrain sometimes, gets really excited about a bunch of different ideas. You might have 10 ideas. If that's the case, you're going to write all of those ideas down. It could be fitness and yoga and photography and all these things that you could create a community around. Or maybe you have absolutely no ideas, and there's a section in that workbook where it's going to help you reconnect to yourself. Because often what I actually find is we don't have too many ideas, we have too little, and we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we know, what we've achieved, and what we can help others with. So there's a section in that workbook that's going to help you kind of reconnect to you and your story, because your story is where you're going to pull your idea from. What have you done in life? What have you achieved? What results do people ask you about? What advice do people ask you on for help on? So you're going to start by mapping out all these ideas. And like I said, if you have none, by the time you go through this workbook, you should have what we call a community idea bank. You should have at least 3, I would say, that you feel pretty good about. From there, we're going to run it through this idea formula and we're going to validate it. So from there, once you validate it, you can actually create your elevator pitch. That's the end goal of all of this. So that at the end, you can go, I, or we, if you're doing it with someone else, bring together this type of person, an ideal member. So for me, it might be freedom seekers, is the people that join my community who have a need or a pain. So who want financial freedom. 2, explanation, which I'll explain what it means on the side here. And again, in that workbook, it'll become very, very clear. To do XYZ things, to gather around a certain topic, to attend events together, to support one another in their goal for achieving financial freedom. There's so many different ways that you can explain what happens inside your community so that they can, and then the ideal outcome. Now, if anyone's familiar with marketing, this is, a formula that it doesn't just help you with a community, it helps you with every business idea. It's basically, who are you targeting? What are their needs and their pains? How can I explain what the product or the service does? And what does it actually get them at the end of the day? So if you just write that down and nothing else, you've already become a better marketer, because every single product, every single idea, if it's an online course, a membership, anything that you're releasing into the world, you'll need to be clear about this so that you know exactly how to find people that you can support, and then also how you can communicate the value of your product or service to them. So the idea formula, we'll run through it real quick, but like I said, in the guide is where you're going to find a lot more in-depth explanation of this. So first thing, once you have all these ideas in front of you, you're going to ask yourself and validate, first of all, is it inspiring? For instance, I could create a community around tax optimization, which is a part of mine, but doing it all around taxes, oh my gosh, not inspiring, right? So I would cross, if I had that on my community idea bank, I would cross that off immediately, not inspiring. Or on the other hand, you could have, like, my partner's incredibly great at fitness, but it's not his ultimate calling in life. So he would cross fitness off his list, even if it was something that was in his bank. Then you would go to N, network. Are there a network of people who care about this topic? Because what I found is sometimes we have these ideas that are so niche that maybe 2 people in the world care about them. And that's just a sign that the network isn't big enough, because ultimately we need to know that there are people and evidence of people, more importantly, that actually care about this topic, because you're going to need to find those people and ask them to join your community. So second thing, and I'll teach you exactly how to do it in the guide, is how to research if there is an audience, a network of people that care about this idea. F is for feeling. How do you want to make these people feel? So once they're inside your community, how are they feeling now? And then how do they feel once they're inside? So it's really understanding the needs and the feelings of the people that you're targeting for this community. How do they feel, and how will they feel once they're in your community, and getting really clear on that. Ideal member. So who is the ideal person to join this community? Sometimes what happens in business is we don't know who it's for. And so we end up creating something that could be for anyone. And unfortunately, that speaks to no one. So you don't want to niche down so small that there's only 2 people that care about an idea, but you also don't want to be so broad that, it's not really clear who this is for. Because when someone looks at the sales page for your offer, whatever that may be, it needs to be very clear that it's for them. They need to be able to read it and go, oh, that's me. This is for me. So if we don't stop by validating our idea and going, who is this for? It's going to make it very hard for us to do anything else, like writing a sales page, having sales calls, sending an email out. Because I want to preface this and say, you don't need to be an amazing marketer to do all of this stuff. Like I said, the numbers that I showed you in the beginning was from 5 emails, no fancy webinars, no ads, none of that stuff. But you do need to know the fundamentals for any type of business. And this is one of them. The N stands for need. What do these people need? What are their needs? Pretty straightforward. I stands for ideal outcome. So these ideal members, they join. What is the ideal outcome for them? Could be financial freedom, could be finding a relationship, could be healing from trauma, could be understanding how to cook healthy recipes for their kids on a budget, maybe. There is an infinite, pardon the pun, amount of ideas out there and an infinite amount of needs that people have. Every single business that you see around you when you go in a store serves a need. Literally every single thing serves a need. So there is endless ideas that you can create and endless needs that you can serve. Ideal outcome we talked about. So what is the ideal outcome for these people? T for target. This one's really important. Where can you target these people? Where do you find these people? Where do they hang out? So let's say I had a community around aquariums, because believe it or not, as you're going to see later in this presentation, people have massive communities around aquariums. I would go, well, where do I find people that are really, really interested in aquariums? And what you'll find is there's Facebook groups with a bunch of these people in. The answer could be, maybe if you were targeting, people that were really interested in health and wellness, where would you find those people? Are there certain other communities online? Are there events that these people go to? Do they follow certain Facebook pages, Instagram pages? Where do these people hang out, either in person or in real life, so that you know where to target them? And then E is your explanation. What actually happens inside your community? And that one might be a little bit unclear, and we're going to talk about how to understand what the heck to put inside your community coming right up. But that's a brief overview of the infinite idea formula. Now, if that sounded complex, don't worry, because we have actually done it all for you. You can go to memberup.com/ideas and download the guide that I was talking about that has all of these action steps, these exercises in it, that is going to help you kind of walk through it step by step, and also 200 done for you community ideas in there. So take a second, just write that down while I get a drink of water. All right. And before you tell me that you don't have an idea, because I know that there are some people watching this that are super excited to go and take action, and other people are going to have all those limiting beliefs coming up going, I don't know what I can do. And I want to let you know, like I said, that there are so many different types of communities. Often we only tend to think of the, business or health, wealth, and relationships, kind of the big three. But there are so many communities, like I said, aquariums, 327,000 members in a Facebook group. That clearly shows that there is a network of people that really care about this topic. So when you download that guide and when you go through these exercises, you'll see that there are so many things that you can create a community around, so many different topics that people are interested in. And once you go through the exercises and validate it, that'll become even more clear just how many ideas there are out there. So don't limit yourself thinking that there's not an idea. Download the guide. I promise you will definitely find at least one. So once you go through that exercise, like I said, you're going to have clarity and confidence in your community idea. So let's move on to the other questions. What about churn? How do I keep these people engaged once they're inside? What do I even include? What is a community? Okay, you said it's where people gather, but like, what actually is it? What's inside? How do I build one, and how do I get people to join? So let's address the first one, which is churn. Because I know that there are going to be some people that are aware of memberships, recurring revenue, and they maybe have even tried it out. And they're like, yeah, it's great, but my members didn't stick around. How do I actually keep them engaged? And you're right. Churn is one of the things that we do have to factor in and consider. So we want to think about kind of how do most people build communities? And this is what you're going to see. This is why I say that churn is something to consider, because how most people build communities is that they'll market the community, whether that's through email, social media, paid ads, PR, maybe JV partnerships, maybe affiliate offers, whatever the means, they get people to join their community. The prospect likes what they see in the marketing and they join the community. But then the business owner focuses back on that top of the funnel to get more and more members, and they don't pay attention to the members inside, and the members churn out. But how to build an extraordinary community, which is what we're all about at MemberUp, and what I've been able to figure out over these 12 years is how to keep people sticking around, is that you go through the same process. Talk about your community, you market it, people like what they see, they join the community, and then instead of churn, you actually have retention. The business owner sets up their community in a way to keep their members engaged and coming back month over month, year over year. So the question then is, what makes a community extraordinary, and how do you build one quickly and easily? That's what I'm going to share with you using the MemberUp method. And that's basically just a community building practice that we've created using our experience. And I say our because we have a big team behind MemberUp. In all different industries, we have, we're built by creators for creators, which is really cool because we have someone with an incredibly large coaching business, someone with one of the biggest online course businesses, Danielle Leslie, you may have heard of her, 20 million in sales. I have so much experience with recurring revenue. And then our development team as well, they've all been building memberships behind the scenes for other people. So this is a formula that we've kind of sat down through a lot of very long days with a lot of coffee and figured out, how do we make this work for any niche, for any business model? And what we found is what we call the member up method. And it is that the best communities are really made up of these 5 components. And they all start with C. So we've called them the 5 C's because it's way catchier. So the first C, if you're like, Amy, what do I put in here? What do I put in a membership? What do I put in a community? The first thing, obviously, is content. And that doesn't mean a whole lot of content, so don't stress out. It just means content. So this is the stuff. It's what resources people actually receive once they've purchased and are on the inside of the community. It's the core of the community. And while it's often what you're going to communicate as one of the main reasons for people to join, this doesn't necessarily mean that more equals more value. In fact, it's often quite the opposite. One of the main reasons that people cancel subscription services is actually too much stuff, because it creates overwhelm. Think about it. If you're in a community and you see that this creator is putting out content every day, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have time to watch content every single day, or I certainly don't prioritize it. So then what happens is people feel like they're behind and that they're not getting value out of it, and then they cancel. So I just want to share that with you, because if you are going to embark on this journey, it's one of those weird things that happens where always like, oh my God, I have to provide so much more. And it's actually a disservice. And then you realize this and you're like, oh, that makes so much sense, right? So more doesn't equal more value. It's actually better to have less content that's valuable to keep your member overwhelm very low. So I'm going to use a real life example that we all know. It's not an online community, but it is a recurring revenue business, and that is Peloton. So the stuff or the content for Peloton is an at-home stationary bike and access to a library of pre-recorded workout classes. Pretty straightforward. But within a community, an online community, there are 2 main types of content. There's your core content, and for educators, that's going to be your success path. So basically for me, like I have a financial education community. My success path is basically the 7 steps that people need to take to achieve financial freedom and have enough money to buy back their time, and the supporting materials with that. So being an educator, that's what my success path looks like. Never changes. 7 steps. Don't add to it. If anything, I add ritual content, which is calls, and we'll talk about it in a second. But it's just those 7 steps that people go through. It's kind of the core framework of the community. For entertainers, because you might be here with, a YouTube channel, you might have a podcast, you're not trying to teach anything, but you would have exclusive content, maybe behind the scenes YouTube clips or gated podcast episodes. And you might have heard that, like when you're listening to a podcast, they're like, oh, join my subscription to hear like the extra 20 minutes of, the juicy stuff of the interview, right? So for entertainers and educators, it's slightly different, what you'll include in that core content library. Your ritual content is what you release or provide periodically to keep your members retained and engaged. This could be live events, calls, new content, or resources. For Show It, it's a webinar. You're keeping these guys engaged and retained over here. So that happens every 2 weeks with Show It. For me, I do a call every 2 weeks in my community. I've seen people do it much more frequently. I've also seen people do it much more rarely, once a quarter even. Again, I would say start with less and add more. People generally don't mind if you add more, but they do mind when you take things away. So start with less. You can always add more. And here are some tips, and I'll use the member up interface to kind of run through some quick tips of how to actually organize this in a community, no matter what software you're using. Obviously, I'm going to use member up to show you how to organize it, because it includes all of these elements of the member up method within the platform. Now, your content library, you're going to want to make sure that you have clear headings. So see where it says module 1? You can change that to be whatever. Like in my community, it says level 1. But you want to make sure that the content is clearly laid out with different sections so that anyone can jump in where they feel is best for them. So you want to make sure, like I said, clear sections, clear headings. Everything is optimized to reduce member overwhelm. Think about, again, if you come into a community and you see a wall of content, which I have at times, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I bounce out immediately. On the other hand, let's say I'm starting off on a fitness journey. Let's say I want to get abs. That'd be great. And I'm like, okay, I want to get abs and I want to learn how to do yoga because all these yoga girls have the abs, and I joined the yoga community. And it starts off with like stretching. And I'm like, ooh, not here for that. I'm here for the abs. Where is that section? And if it were clearly labeled core exercises, then I could go in, find what I need. And it wouldn't matter that there's a lot of other content there because I'm able to find it because it is organized. So there's a couple of tips with core content. Again, we're going to talk about this in just a second, but you don't necessarily need to have all this fancy content pre-recorded. You don't need to take months. Like I said, I launched my community back in February, my brand new community, with zero content. There was nothing in the content library, literally zero. Because, and that shows you the value of community, and we'll talk about that in a second. People were joining for the community more than they joined for the content, which is kind of counterintuitive. Most of the time we think, oh, people are joining for the content. They don't really care about the community. Community is one of the most underrated and impactful, valuable parts of having an online community. Then your ritual content. Now, this is our events calendar within MemberUp. So some tips for this is that you want to have the ability to RSVP to events, which we have in the platform, but other platforms will allow you to do it too. You want to allow people to easily add it to their calendar, because if they can't add it to their calendar, if something's not on my calendar, it does not happen. So you want to allow people to add it to their calendar. You also want to keep the ritual events scheduled out about 3 months in advance. And the reason is because in a subscription, people are kind of constantly going, is this valuable? Should I stay in here? And what hooks people is being able to look at the calendar and go, oh, what's coming up? Oh, I think I want to stay for that, right? Like, how many times have you thought of canceling something and then you see like, oh, but there's that cool part of it coming up, right? And then you stick around for that. So don't just add like this week's events onto your calendar. Add that out for about the next 3 months. And once you have a system to do so, it's actually not as overwhelming as it sounds. It's super systemized. You can go in at the start of every quarter and just add that in there. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to do is, instead of adding call recordings, I don't know if you guys have ever joined an online course, but they have calls. And then there's like 852 Zoom calls in the actual content library itself. Overwhelm again. So what you want to do with your events is make sure that you're uploading the replays of the events into the actual events calendar in the section that is for replays, instead of putting that into your main content library, because it gets mixed up with your core curriculum. How are we doing so far? Everyone following along? Shamisha will get you chatting over there. She'll get on your case. Make sure that you're following here. All right, cool. The next C is community, obviously. First two, content and community, very obvious. The last three, I promise you, they're a little bit less obvious. So community is an element that allows members access to you, the leader of the community. Or if you're not someone that identifies with being like the face of or the leader of something, I totally get it. So it might be access to others, guests, or even just the rest of the community. Sometimes I've joined communities not because of who's hosting it, but because of who else is in the room. Right? So consider that. You don't necessarily have to be the protagonist or the face. You're just allowing people access to either you or others in the community, or guests that are going to come and present in the community. Now, this could come in the form of live calls or events led by you or the guest, which you can schedule on your events calendar and give your members something to look forward to. Or like I said, maybe it's not so much about you as it is about the network of others that they're going to have access to. For Peloton, when you buy a Peloton, you immediately have access to celebrity trainers and a community of peers to work out with. And if you follow, they've done it really, really smart. If you follow some of the trainers on Instagram who all are like blowing up, going viral, you kind of, even if you're not a Peloton user, you see these people and you're like, oh, they're really cool. And then when you buy a Peloton, you get access to them that other people don't have. So it's really, really cool to see, something that we see as a stationary bike also following the MemberUp method. I'm sure they thought of it before us, but we'll just claim it that they were following the MemberUp method. So most people, for the community element, they go old school, they revert to a Facebook group. And here's why you should reconsider, because I've done that in the past too. Number one, you have to fight against the algorithm for other creators and your members' attention. So I think it's like 10% of your members will be shown a post. And if it performs well, then it will get pushed to the wider audience. And if I've spent money to acquire people in my community, or if I've just got people that I want to provide value to, I want to make sure all of them are seeing the value that I provide, not just 10%. I don't want Zuckerberg getting in the way of my community getting the value that I want to share with them. Conversations are not organized, which leads to, again, member overwhelm. I'm on repeat with this because that is the whole thing of reducing churn, reduce overwhelm. Generally, it's a manual approval and removal process, and some members are not going to have Facebook accounts. That's come up a whole lot. If you have like a course on Kajabi or something, and then you have a Facebook group, people are like, I'm not on Facebook. How do I access? And that becomes a bit of a nightmare too. It's also just not a premium experience. You're building Zuckerberg's brand instead of your own. If I am charging a premium for someone to come into my community, or even if it's a free community, I'm just vain. I want to have a good experience for my members. I want it to look sexy. I want it to feel premium. I want to make people feel like they're having a really great time as soon as they touch any product that I build. So it's not often a premium experience to use a Facebook group. So how we do this within MemberUp is we use spaces on the side to actually organize your discussions. So let's say you have like a big mastermind group, which I see a lot of those just uploading resources, and they have a Facebook group after that. Instead, you can actually have spaces, which is clearly organized discussions. One that I absolutely love to include is member wins. So what this does is it encourages your members to share their wins, number one. Number two, it allows you to effortlessly pull testimonials of all the things your members are achieving within. And then number three, when people come into the community, there's this win space where they see everyone winning and having great results, which is incredibly motivating. So I have some best practices around what spaces to set up within MemberUp. But in general, you want to have an introduction space, a member win space, and then anything else applicable to your community. And it's all super organized in one place. The other thing you want to often allow, depending on your community, but 99% of the time, you want to allow people to privately DM one another and create little groups and talk within kind of the privacy of their own chat. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of the conversations, I'm kind of a lurker on social media. It appears like I don't comment or do anything. But in the DMs, I'm really, really active. Some people just feel more comfortable engaging in DMs. So if possible, allow DMs. And what you'll find is people are messaging each other back and forth. They're organizing meetups with each other, and you don't even have to get involved in any of that. The third C is collaboration. And I know we're getting close to time, so we're going to power through these last ones here. Collaboration means that you're making people feel like they actually have say and are considered in the direction of the community or the membership. You ask for their opinion on future content, what they love or what they feel could be improved. And you're making members feel like their voice matters while also getting them excited. So how do you do this? You can do this through polls. You can do it through surveys. If you're using MemberUp, it's done for you with Spark, and I'll talk about that later. Like I said, we've built in all of this methodology into a platform because we know it's what keeps people sticking around. So I'm always asking my community, do you want this? Do you want this? What do you want to learn about? And even if I've already decided what that is for them, it makes them feel involved in the direction, right? It also is just really helpful to speak to your customers, to have that input from them, because then it's not up to you. They literally just tell you what they want and you're able to provide it for them. Peloton do this by at the end of each class, members can thumbs up or thumbs down the class. So you feel like you're involved in the direction of Peloton. And I'm pretty sure any instructors that have too much thumbs down, you don't see them on there too long, right? So you guys are actually voting when you have a Peloton for what you want to see. Second last one is clout. Now, love it or hate it, humans are driven by desire for status. That's why, before it was able to be purchased, people loved the blue check mark on Instagram. It's why we buy designer clothing or a nice car. And oftentimes you think of status as like materialism, and it doesn't have to be. Status can even be, and this is a Russell Brunson saying, status could even be, because he was convinced, his wife was like, no, you're wrong. I don't care about status. And he's like, no, but you do, because you bought a minivan. She's like, how is that status? And he's like, well, you want to be seen as a good mom amongst your peer group. So we often think of status as like gold chains and Lamborghinis, but it's not always that, right? It's how people are perceiving us. So most of the important decisions that we make throughout life are generally influenced in some way, shape, or form by status. So how do we take that insight about human nature, which again, love it or hate it, is part of us all, and apply it to our own little micro environment within our community? Peloton do it by calling out live attendees, and they're recognizing key milestones for things like their 1,000th class, which makes people feel really special and like they have some kind of status in the group. How we recommend doing it is awarding members badges for taking positive actions, like being a member for a certain amount of time or contributing a certain amount of posts. You could shout out your community MVPs on your home feed and provide a sense of recognition. You could create a dedicated space for shouting out member wins, or you could actually take some of the work off your plate and allow your members to actually present within your community. So it actually feels like a community rather than more of a dictatorship where it's only one head always presenting. And then the last C is the most important as well as the least talked about, and that is connection. not just, a like, but real authentic connection. People come for the content, but they stay when they actually feel truly understood, seen, and connected to the rest of the community. Imagine being invited to an event where you don't know anyone, which as an introvert terrifies me. What's the difference between that event being one that you remember forever and never want to leave, and one that you leave 20 minutes after you arrive? It's generally the other people in the room. Do they make you feel comfortable? You can be amongst a crowd of amazing people and still not really feel connected to them. And as humans, all we truly want is to deeply connect with others. But it's also something that, without a little help, most of us struggle to do, and it stays pretty surface level. And that's why we created Spark within the platform, to get people past the surface level and form real meaningful connections. So what Spark does is it automatically posts questions that foster meaningful connection within your community every 24 hours. And these questions are done for you. All you got to do is click a relevant question pack from your creator dashboard. So there's packs around business and finance and just getting to know one another, or introspective packs. There's all different packs in there that are all done for you. And once a member responds, then they can view all the other community members' responses as well as the creator's response. So what this does is it means that people can't lurk. If you want to see anyone else's answers, and they're usually pretty juicy questions, you have to provide. So it's like you get what you give. This is also really cool for a creator because they're geared to do a couple of things. Number one, obviously get the conversation sparked. Number two, it effortlessly collects testimonials for you because we've woven in a couple of questions here and there about what do you love about the community? What's the best thing about this community? So as a creator, you can kind of forget to do that, and you're going to see those still come through. And then number three, it's actually geared so that you can share, you and your members can both share the question of the day on social media and say, hey, I just answered this juicy question inside this community. And it's going to encourage other people to join the conversation and join the community as well. So we are obsessed with Spark. It's working incredibly well. It's probably the hit in my community. I like to think that my content is great, but people are really just enjoying getting to know one another and going deeper and getting beyond the surface level. It's something I really enjoy too, but sometimes I struggle to know exactly how. So some questions to ask yourself to sum all this up. In the content department, what content can you put into your community? Can I make improvements to how I organize my content if you already have one? For community, am I allowing my community to connect with one another? Can I combine my community and my content into one seamless experience? So what often happens if you have like Kajabi and then a Facebook group, or Teachable and a Facebook group or something like that, is that they're going to log into one thing and kind of forget the other. Whereas with something like MemberUp, where they're both together, what happens is kind of like when you go to the grocery store and you're going to get the milk, but they put the milk way at the back and then you have to walk past everything else. And then you end up buying, 51 treats, if you're me, on the way because you saw them, right? So if I'm going into a community and I'm like, oh, I just want to check out that lesson. I can't remember this thing someone says. But then on the way there, I see these interesting conversations happening. I see, members speaking to each other. I see some events that are happening. It's going to encourage me to get a lot more involved. So that's why I recommend putting them in the same place. Collaboration. So are you allowing your community a say in the direction, or how can you make their voice feel more heard? Clout. Are you giving your community members a sense of status in any way, shape, or form? And how can you make them feel more seen, celebrated, and valued? And connection. Are you encouraging deep, authentic connections being made? And do you have a system in place to ensure that this is actually a priority and you don't forget about it and focus back on getting new members like a lot of people do? If you do these 5 things, your members are going to be engaged, happy, retained. You're going to have an extraordinary community. And like I said, shameless plug, we have built MemberUp all around this method. So if you want to get started doing all of this, you can literally set up a community in just 60 seconds or less. MemberUp will take care of all of this for you. But even if you do decide to build on another platform, now you know the elements that have to go within it. Like I said, after 12 years in online business, building, growing, and managing my own communities, consulting for some of the largest brands in the industry to do the same for them, literally the largest female entrepreneurship community I consulted for and rebuilt their community around this methodology, we decided to put an incredible team together and just build this so that anyone can do it versus the custom builds, to make it easy for you guys to grow a thriving community without all the tech headache, which is what I love about Show It as well. It's all the beautiful things, all the things you love, but with no tech headache. It's actually our mission as well, not to just provide a platform, but to become the most results-driven community platform, which is why we've also included a free course, which is like 9 hours long, goes way more in depth than I've had the time to do today, that's included for free. when you join the platform too, because we want you guys to be successful. We don't just want you to join the platform and then not have any members. So within that, that's where I teach the seed member launch strategy, which is exactly what I use, sending those 5 emails, literally give you the exact scripts that I use, as well as everything else that you're going to need to build, launch, manage, and grow a thriving community. And the best part is it's easy to use, beautiful, and customizable, just like Show It. This is my Show It website. On the left-hand side, I am a psycho about branding. I love branding. I love aesthetics, and Show It was the only place that I could actually get what I wanted out of, a website. There was all these other ones that required code that just took way too long. There was all these other ones that I couldn't really make look the way that I wanted to. And I keep coming back to Show It because I love it. And MemberUp is kind of the community version of Show It. So that's my MemberUp community, my Show It website. They seamlessly go together. I can even host them on the same domain if I choose to. And the best part for a branding nerd like me is that they just look beautiful together. And you can kind of carry that brand experience seamlessly through. That being said, I know that we've gone a little bit over, but you guys probably have some questions. So I wanted to jump into, Shamisha's probably been keeping track of any that have come up. So hit me with any of your questions.
All right, great. That was a lot of content, a lot of information, and it was all just so good. So thank you, Amy. But we will jump into some questions. I, of course, have some of my own questions, but we do have a question from Danette. I believe that her name's pronounced that way. She's asking, what's the difference between MemberUp and MemberSpace?
It's a great question, and I have not seen MemberSpace.
Okay.
I've seen all the other ones, but I haven't seen MemberSpace. But if you do want to send us a quick little email at support@memberup.com, we can definitely get you that answer once we take a look into it. Or you can just peep our website too and see the features that we include for a comparison. We are, and caveat, we're fresh. So as any tech platform, we're going to be building a lot more on in the future. And now that you kind of understand the methodology behind what we build, I think I could say that even without seeing MemberSpace, there are not a lot of platforms out there that are really considering, how do we make this the best possible experience for members and creators? A lot of other platforms are really just competing on features, and they add so many different features in that it's just really overwhelming. And like I said, the number one thing to avoid is overwhelm. So we see a lot of people that come into MemberUp and they're like, I want all these things under the sun. I want, a bonus thing to unlock when my member clicks this 5 times, like all this extravagant tech. And we're like, guys, keep it simple. Like, that's one of the best things I think about MemberUp is that it is simple, but it's also powerful in that it's built around this methodology. So specifics, definitely email us at support@memberup.com. We'd love to give you the specifics once we do a little deep dive on it. And you can also visit memberup.com/pricing and see like a big feature list of what we include. There's also like a live walkthrough, a demo, all that stuff there.
Okay, great. Okay, so going through the 5 C's, I have some questions kind of within each of those categories. So for content, as you're starting a membership, you have an idea, but you don't have the content yet. What are some just very basic things that someone may need just to get started on the content? I know you mentioned like your 5 emails, but I know people just get overwhelmed with, do I need to do video? Do I need to have pictures? Do I need to have articles? So what are just some basic things that you feel that someone may need to just get started?
Great question. So if you're an educator, that's why I kind of shared educators and entertainers are slightly different. If you're an entertainer and you just have, YouTube videos, I'd put your exclusive stuff, the stuff that people can't get anywhere else. That's what you're going to put as some content. But most of the people that we serve right now are educators. You can also charge a little bit of a higher fee with education because you're actually helping someone achieve a result, and the need that you're serving is bigger. So entertainers, the need that you're fulfilling is really just, I'm bored and I want to watch more content. So it's generally like $20 a month, right? Or something like that. Education, you're helping people achieve an outcome. And the bigger the pain that they're in, so the bigger the need that they have, then obviously, and the more results you have in serving that, the more you can charge for it. So I'll speak to the education side of it, and how I did the seed member launch with no content, like I said, is basically by going through that process, the infinite idea formula. I knew what I wanted to create it around. I knew my idea. I knew who I was targeting. I knew what they wanted. I knew how I could serve them. And from there, I also created the explanation, and I knew like a vision of what the community would ultimately become. And so what I did is I sent these emails out with just the vision. And do have on slides, if we want to go into it later on, I do have basically, and it's in that guide too, how to talk about the vision, and you basically send an email out saying, if it were you, you'd be like, hi guys, I'm Shamisha. I'm thinking of starting this community. And then you go into the why. I'm thinking of starting this community because when I was raising my 5 children, and, which we were talking about before this, and I knew all of the, the trials and tribulations that happen with raising children. I felt really alone, and I really want other mothers to feel really supported. You go into your why. Why are you doing this? That's going to help that ideal person kind of connect to the mission. Anyone, Shamisha's ideal member in that case would be, other mothers that are struggling with the same things. So if I'm reading that, and I'm a mom, which I'm not yet, and Shamisha did not sell me on just prior to the call. But if I were in that boat, I would connect with her why. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me too. Cool. Okay, what's she going to do about this? And then you paint the vision. I envision this community being a space where mothers can come in and support one another. We can share, any hacks that we've found to help XYZ. You paint this big vision of what it's going to become. And then you say, but this is just an idea, right? This is just an idea at this stage. So I'm validating interest. If you're interested, I'm going to be offering special pricing. It's going to start 2 months from now. So I'm going to be offering special pre-launch pricing that you guys, if you're interested, all you have to do is just reply to this email. I'll give you more details. So what I love about this, and that's a condensed version, is that number one, there's no content just yet. It's just validating your idea. Number two, it's all behind the scenes. So oftentimes you see people that are talking about launching on social media, most overwhelming thing for a new entrepreneur, because you're like, what if I fail publicly, right? What if no one replies? And so this is behind the scenes, and no one's going to know if you get no responses to that email. It's just a way for you to test without any kind of fear of failure involved. Then once you have members inside, and we've had people go through this and they're so surprised. They're like, I thought no one would respond. And then they're like, oh my God, I got 20 people respond, right? Mm-hmm. So once you have those members and they know that there's a start date of the community, you get them in the community and you literally ask them, what is the content that you need? And you can do surveys. We talk about this in Member Up University. You can survey them. That's what I did for mine. And I'm like, okay, I have an idea of the vision of the community. I think I know what I want to provide to these people, but let me ask them. And that's, again, how you're going to retain these people, because you're not just creating something out of thin air. It's literally what they're asking for. So I just did a simple survey, and it helped me understand what they were struggling with, how I could help them, what are the points that they really want to learn about. And then from there, I just backtracked from the result. Okay, these people all have this issue. They want this result. What are the steps that I took to get that result? And because you as a mom, right, you could tell me, you could school me on it all day. You don't have to spend all the time researching. Yeah. So if you were trying to help moms, you would know exactly, because it's around a topic that you love and that you connect with. So for the content, that's what I'd say. And I'd also say, do it live the first time. So people think content has to be beautifully recorded videos, and then they kind of do the procrastination thing, where it's actually fear of failure that they're putting off into the distance a lot of the time, where it's like, oh, I got to film 3 months worth of videos. And really that just makes you feel like you're being productive, but unfortunately you're just putting off the fear. And so we say, do it live first time and just record it. Often what I find is people actually like me live most, even though I think I have really great videos. People like it live, right? Because it's more connection. Again, it goes back to that C. So I would say do it live first, just record it, and then put that into the initial content. And all you do is you use your events calendar to schedule out, the next 3 months. So someone joins, they're connecting with each other. They got the special founders pricing. You're asking them, surveying them, keeping them updated. Ooh, the content's coming along. I'm so excited for you. And then there's just an events calendar, and it's scheduled out for the next 2 months. And maybe there's a call a week where you're delivering live content, and then you record it and you put that content into the content library. So super easy.
So good. I love that. Okay, awesome. So now this has triggered more people to ask questions, which is so good. Okay, so we have a question from Mary. She's asking, if you start a community, how do you recommend recruiting members? I think you just kind of answered that. Just put a poll out there, ask questions, but you can go into more detail if you want. And she says, especially starting from zero, what is that experience for the first few members?
Yeah, it's a good question. So often that's one of the things that people are the most shy about, is what if I only get 3 members? think about if you joined a community where you got access to a leader. Like, let's say I joined Tony Robbins' community and it was like one-on-one access with Tony Robbins. That'd be sick.
Yeah.
Like, I've paid like $100 a month or something to join, and now I'm like super connected and close with this person. So often you're going to be able to serve people deeper and better, even if it is just a few people. So don't let that voice of like, oh, it's not good enough, there's not enough people in there, kind of perk up too much. That just means that you're getting started. You're going to want to go above and beyond and serve these people. But if you do the seed member launch and the way we talk about it, it's all like I said, those emails and everything are documented in Member Up University. If you do it that way, then you should have a lot more than that. But generally what we say is anywhere from 3 to 5% on a not very engaged list or a bigger list, or up to 50% of a list will convert if it's like a wait list. Okay. So it really varies. We have all these benchmarks within the workbook, so you can see exactly what you should expect, like what would be a good benchmark to kind of help you understand, well, how much am I going to make from this? And you can plan out your revenue goals for the year and all of those things.
That's awesome.
But yeah, you do want to have at least, I would say, you don't need a massive audience, but I would say have at least 200, 300 engaged people. And if you don't, we teach you how to build that as well, because it's actually super simple. Okay. There's a workshop that we just did on how to get your first 100 email subscribers in the next 24 hours. So it's really achievable to get, those first 200, 300 subscribers on your list. And then from there, that's when then you can grow. But really with memberships, you hear about course launches and it's these big cash injections, which, by the way, one thing I didn't share is I sold mine annually. So you can turn a course. If you're a course creator that's here, turn your course into an annual subscription, sell it for the same price. Then you can serve your members and you're getting recurring revenue and they have a place to live, right? So I wasn't selling like a $20 a month subscription because it can be super demotivating to think of, what if I get 10 members at $20 a month? Then you're like, oh my God, I have this job to do for like not much, right? Mm-hmm. So I always recommend selling an annual in the beginning. I'll probably always keep mine annual because, and it depends on your goals, but because you get that cash injection that you would have with a course, it allows you to feel super stoked and motivated, like, oh, look at the cash that I just brought in. And then it allows you to focus on serving the community too. So there's a lot that I could share around that. We've kind of documented literally step-by-step in Member Up University, and some of it's in that workbook, that free guide as well. So dive into that. And if you do have any other questions around it, just reach out at support@memberup.com and we can kind of help guide you further from there.
Perfect. So you keep mentioning Member Up University. So David did have a question, like, where do you start? How do you join that community? So how do we do that?
Yes. When you join Member Up, like I said, we're trying to be the most result-driven platform. So you don't just get the platform, like it's not just software. It's the platform plus access to Member Up University. So those are hand in hand. So you can join at memberup.com/pricing. You can check us all out at memberup.com. But when you join the platform, literally it's a switcher on the side. So you can effortlessly switch between building your community and then you're like, oh, I'm stuck. I don't know what the heck to do. Switch to Member Up University, watch a video, get the scripts, get the PDFs, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then jump back into building your community too. So it's both in one.
Perfect. Okay. So we have a question from Cindy. She's saying she just started a podcast. I share stories of women to inspire, encourage, and empower women from all walks of life. Any ideas on how I can start my own community, particularly for podcaster?
Yeah. And podcasting is one of the main types of communities. If you look at Patreon, podcasters are like their main demographic. So you got a huge opportunity with podcasting. 2 ways that I can see it happen. If you're more of the entertainer, meaning that people are tuning in to hear stories and it's more of like an entertaining with a touch of education type podcast, then what would be best is to do the exclusive content model. So this is really common for podcasters. You'll kind of interview, and this really depends on how well you can hook an audience and get them interested in the other content, the gated content. So if you have a podcast and you're interviewing someone really juicy, maybe you leave like the most juicy question right until the end and you tease it in the free content. Okay. So in the podcast, you like start it off with a hook and it's like, you've got this big build up music or something. And it's like, I can't believe you're sharing the answer to this question, Mary, or something. And then it's like drop. And then it gets into the episode. And then it's like, oh, subscribe to whatever, to actually get the rest of this episode, or however you want to do it. But you could do it that way as an entertainer, or as an educator, if you're sharing stories of women to inspire, encourage, and empower, then what I would do is grab that guide and go through the idea formula, because you might find that, okay, you know that your ideal members are, or the people that you're targeting are women. And then you go, what do they need? How can I serve them? What skills, experience, advice do I have that I could package up into education? So, like I said, oftentimes we don't give ourselves credit for the ways that we could help these women, but go through that formula, and that'll help you decide, do I just want to do it as a podcast, like an entertainment-based community, or is there a way that I could potentially support these women with educational type content? But if you go through that formula, that'll help you make the decision. But yeah, there are plenty of podcasts really thriving just with the exclusive content model. It's just a mindset shift. Okay. You go from, how do I really hook people, and become more of that like entertainer, and like then you're really thinking about storytelling and excitement, or how do I really showcase what I can help these women with on the podcast and get them to join the community, because the community is where they get that help. So 2 different routes.
There you go. Awesome. Yeah. Hopefully, Cindy, that answered that question for you. David had another question. So if you're starting from a list of 0, you don't have a community, what is the best way to start that initial email list and get your vision out there to people?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we teach a bunch of different ways. Like I said, the first way to start is the process that I just shared on a workshop within Member Up University, how to get your first 100 in 24 hours. And it's going to be people that you know. That's the funny thing. Oftentimes we think of like your email list of like completely detached, like these humans on the internet. And it's actually going to be people that you know. So people around you, basically the process for that is sending text messages to your existing list, sending like your phone list. Anyone that you have on social media, I'm sure you have an Instagram or a Facebook page. I give you a little script to share with them around, hey, I'm thinking about starting an email list around X. Would you like me to add you? And you'd be surprised. And the biggest reason I recommend doing this is because a lot of people have fear when I even mention the thought of doing that, because they're like, oh God, do you want me to message people I know? And it's like, yeah, of course. But they feel a lot more comfortable putting it out into like the ether of like, oh, random people on the internet. But it's about connection, right? And that's what a community is. That's what your email list is. And, being online, it often feels impersonal, but it all should feel personal. The more personal it feels, the better and more successful you're going to be at anything that you do. So I really recommend getting over the hardest hurdle first and like message the people that you know. Because what you realize is once you do the scary thing, it's not so scary anymore. And you'll often have better results than you ever thought you would. You're just psyching yourself out about it. Yeah. So we teach that first and foremost. Then if you want to go a little bit more leveraged and at scale, we teach lead magnets. And this is a pretty common strategy that, a lot of people teach. I have mine set up. If you go to amysangster.com, you can literally see how I do it using Show It. I just hook up my email software in there. And how I do it is anyone on social media, I post content about finance and business and mindset, which is what my community is about. Then I have a juicy lead magnet, which I share, which is how to responsibly quit your job and how much you'll need to do so. No one has any idea of how much money they need to do that, but everyone wants to be able to do that, right? So people go and download that guide, which I occasionally tease and share. It's free. Then they're on my email list. So both strategies depends on if you really are just starting from 0, go with the 100. The way to do that first, like I said, is full workshop in there for you. And then from there, get a little bit more sophisticated. I often see beginners try to go really sophisticated in the beginning. And we like to keep it simple. It's really just connecting with people and asking them if you can support them. So do it the old school way first, and then you can get more advanced with it. But both methodologies are all in Member Up University. We also talk about how to grow on social media, because that's the big sore spot for people is like, well, how do I actually get out there? How do I gain an audience? So we teach that as well, because that is something that is really what boosted my initial start in online business. Like I said, I knew nothing about digital marketing. But I just have a massive audience from the YouTube cringy videos.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. So we have one more question. Guys, we're going to go through this last question, but if you have any additional questions that come up, please reach out to Amy. Amy, what's the best way for them to reach you if they have additional questions?
So two ways, support at memberup.com for any kind of platform related questions. If you have anything specific to me, any strategy questions, you can hit me up at amysangster53 on Instagram. And I can just send you a quick voice note back.
Okay. Awesome. So let's go through the last question. This is questions from Vinny. And he says, I want to start a community for diabetics and how to manage medications and natural ways of managing blood sugar. But do you think that's a good offer because he's not a doctor?
It's a great question. And you should definitely look into what the legalities are around what you can and cannot say. But I do know, I'm not a specialist in that, but what I do know is that there is a doctor that I follow, a natural doctor on Instagram called Dr. Jess. She actually has a membership that is thriving where she shares all of the things that she kind of gets censored for sharing on social media. And she doesn't have a license anymore, I think, because of some stuff that went on. So I know that you can do it. There is a way to do it. You definitely want to research all the legalities behind that and just make sure that you have all the information behind beforehand. But a lot of people, like, so long as you are basically saying, hey, I'm not a doctor, you're disclosing that this is not medical advice, then you are free to share what's helped you. So a lot of people, there are so many people on the internet that are sharing weight loss things. There are so many people that are sharing how they healed their PCS, but they're just very upfront in saying, this is not formal medical advice, but this is the journey that I went on and this is what helped me. So I think that is going to be your best practice, but definitely look into the legalities just so you know right off the bat. But I would say with 90% confidence that you're going to be just fine. And I actually think because of the need for that, that would be a great community.
Okay. Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, this was such a good webinar and we recorded everything. So if you just come back to this link, you'll be able to rewatch it. I know I'm going to have to rewatch it because it was so much good content. And once again, reach out to Amy, reach out to support on Member Up if you have any additional questions. But until next time, guys, have a great day.
Thank you.